Hey everyone, John Grimshaw here, and I am very excited to show you a video that will probably make many of you very sad. But I think it's a really great illustration of a principle that's pretty hard to show usually, which is essentially that I don't recommend anyone, media buyers, business owners, marketing assistants, make decisions based on what you see in Facebook Ads Manager, because I don't think it's an accurate representation ever of how campaigns are performing. And the reason I'm recording this is because I have a great way to show this principle to you. So we launched on Wednesday this week, and it's today, Friday, this new page to opt in for our bootcamp, right? This bootcamp is all about how to survive and thrive in 2021. It's about kind of the big changes we're making to our paid traffic strategy after the iOS 14 changes. So it's a brand new page that has never had traffic run to it before and is only getting traffic from Facebook ads. And we're really not getting any organic traffic or anything else. So the reason this is so important and unique is there's no way that visitors are getting to this page from any source other than Facebook, because we haven't started promoting it more widely yet, which means that it should be a very accurate representation on Facebook, right? Facebook should show us very clearly, oh, this has XX leads, which should match up with exactly what we see in Klaviyo. And you could say, maybe, oh, some people opt in twice, right? So let's say we want it within a 5% margin of error. Okay, well, in Klaviyo, when we look at this list, right, this is the list for this, 756 opt-ins, right? So we want this number in Facebook to be within 5% of this. Doing these calculations off the top of your head isn't always so easy, but it's roughly between 725 and 780, we'll say. Okay, so how many opt-ins does Facebook think we brought in? Okay, so same range, and let me refresh it so it's clean as possible. So Facebook says for the 3 campaigns, and this is just showing the ones that are actually running, 280 plus 276 plus 693. All right, I'm adding it up. You can tell already that number's way off. Oh wait, I guess I filtered this campaign down. I had all the campaigns up before, so I didn't show it. But yeah, 1,250, right? That's way too high. That's not double, but that's, I think, like 80% over what it's supposed to be. 1,249 minus 756 minus 756. That is great to do math on video, isn't it? So it is 65% higher than the number we see in Klaviyo, which we know has to be true because we're measuring the success of getting people to opt in. So Facebook thinks it's gotten not just 65% more credit than we might assign to it based on analytics data, but 65% more opt-ins than actually exist in the system. Okay, maybe there's something wrong with the custom conversion, right, that we're tracking here. So we go in and we can look and say, okay, this is the custom conversion, and it's received 1.7. That number is way too high, right? That's even higher than what Facebook thinks it gets credit for. So the rule is that the URL contains, thank you, 10 days ad bootcamp. Well, if I go into the system, same date range, let me refresh it just so it's as clean as possible. And we get, okay, 789 unique page views, or even 815, right? But this is filtering for specifically this URL. And here, I'll even delete this page so we can just make sure there's no additional factors. So yeah, the number is the same. So somehow Facebook has essentially doubled the number of conversions that are happening. Maybe the thank you page has too many, let's see, thank you ads, bootcamp. I think it's actually thank you 10. Yeah, here we go. Maybe it has 2 pixels on it. So there are 2 pixels, which is okay. This lead event is not even firing off, so that's not the factor. So there's 2 unique pixels, but because there's 2 pixels, that should not mean that in one single pixel, it's double counting the events. And even doubling the events, it would only be 1,500, or excuse me, 1.5K, if we're doubling roughly 750. So something is wrong with Facebook's custom conversion tracking. Now, this is not the end of the world, right? I just wanted to show you this because we have a rare chance where people are often like, oh, Facebook's wrong, or, they say, oh, Facebook actually got these, right? Maybe some were credited to email, some were credited to organic, whatever. Some were credited to direct. That's just fundamentally not possible here. This is showing very clearly that the Facebook's Ads Manager performance is not a very reliable indicator when you're calculating cost per lead or cost per acquisition, right? It's just fundamentally flawed. And so I really do not recommend that you leverage this data from it, right? I think it's really useful to get the number of spin from Facebook. And I think it's really helpful to understand what's going on in the platform, right? Looking at click-through rate and looking at cost per click, looking at even link clicks, right? This metric has to be accurate because it's how Facebook is doing their billing. But acquisition is A, something that can be calculated many different ways, and B, a lot harder to model out because people are across a bunch of different devices. Obviously, there's all this iOS 14 stuff that's coming. It's not here yet, so this can't be blamed solely on iOS 14. But if we say the Facebook's data isn't reliable, what do we do, right? Well, the good news is I really think Google Analytics is a solid, reliable source to track this kind of stuff because, let me refresh it. Google Analytics is very, very bad at tracking stuff that happens between sessions, right? So if you visit a website from your cell phone, click around, maybe you opt in for something, and then 2 days later you come back and visit from your desktop computer, Google Analytics is not very good at tying those two things together. But what it is very good at doing is mapping exactly what you did from when you entered on your phone all the way to when you left, and the same on the computer. So within any individual session, its tracking is pretty darn accurate. So, I know we don't need this yet. What we can do here is go in and say, okay, we have between these two dates about 2,150 people who visited the opt-in page and 790 people who opted in. So it's a little high, but it's within roughly that 5%. It might be within 6%. So it's not exact, but it's pretty darn close. And the match rate to Klaviyo is close enough that we can use this to make decisions, right? We can make smart choices based on this. And so we can calculate our opt-in rate. We can, figure out what's performing. And honestly, this is kind of nice. Entrances, this basically measures the number of times somebody visits this page first in their session. And so usually when I'm trying to calculate how many opt-ins there are just by looking at the URL, I will subtract entrances from this, which gives me 751. So it's 6 under where we are in Klaviyo, but much closer in percentage even. So pretty darn useful. This to me says, hey, we can actually rely on the data in Google Analytics, which I think is very true, right? Especially when you're calculating things like a single session, which is going to be opt-ins, right? People don't often visit an opt-in page and then spend 10 weeks thinking about whether or not they want to opt in, right? They pretty much make the split-second decision, hey, this seems valuable, or it does not. So when you're trying to calculate CPL, using the Google Analytics data is a lot better. And what I do for that is I just say, okay, and of course we can always do Klaviyo, but imagine you'd been running this for a while. You can't necessarily suss out exactly who came from paid traffic just in Klaviyo, right? Or if we were running email and paid traffic at the same time, it's a lot harder to go into Klaviyo and do that breakdown. But luckily in Google Analytics, it's not that hard to do. So we can go in and say, we want to break this out by source medium, right? And again, right now we know it's all Facebook, so it's pretty easy. But I can go in and tell you that, okay, the Facebook conversion rate is, actually, let me filter this to only include the Ads Bootcamp pages. So a few people actually did get here from email. And that actually makes sense because we emailed out a blog post that linked to the opt-in page, but it's a very small percentage of the traffic. But we can use this to calculate what the opt-in rate is. And so for Facebook, the opt-in rate here is 576 divided by 1807. So it's about 32%. For the email content instead, it's way higher, 76 divided by 88. But these people were visiting a blog post that had a CTA linking over to this opt-in page. So their opt-in rate, of course, is going to be a lot higher. So kind of helpful to break out the traffic split like that. But what's really great, and this is, I think, the most useful way to use this, is you can go in and break this out as long as you're using UTM parameters by campaign type. And that is the huge trap, because we basically know that Facebook is saying it's $1.60 per lead. That's just wrong. It's objectively wrong. We already looked at this like a million different ways, and it just can't be true. But we do know that we spent roughly $2,000 on Facebook. And I think we can reliably say that conservatively, let's see. Well, I clicked away from the Facebook one. Let me see if I can just go back. 576 leads came from Facebook. So 1991 divided by 576, $3.46. And even, let's just say, we're going to credit this referral traffic as well, right? So throw another, and you know, we'll just include everything, right? I'm just going to make it real simple. Edit this. I'm just going to turn this off. We're going to say, just for simplicity's sake, everything that came to this came from Facebook. That would put our opt-in rate, or our average cost per lead, at $2.52. That's a great opt-in rate. I'm not unhappy with that. I mean, obviously $1.60 is better, but I'm not going to complain about whatever it is, I just calculated this, 252. So when we want to go in and do this split out, though, where we want to look at cold versus warm, oh, shoot, I put the wrong one in. I need this to be campaign. So we can go in and say, okay, the warm, and this is where I'm going to just add another filter to make this easier to visualize. And we use the word warm in all the warm campaigns. We use the word cold in all the cold campaigns. It makes it real easy to do this. But so warm, there were 705 visits, it looks like, to the opt-in page, and 320 people actually opted in. So 320, 705. So 45% opt-in rate. That's pretty good. And 320 opt-ins. And we can go and say, all right, the spend on warm traffic specifically for this campaign's lifetime has been $956. So 956 divided by 320, roughly $2.99 per opt-in. While Facebook thinks it's less than half of that. So, okay, good to know. But again, even at $3 a lead, I'd still scale this up. Now, cold is a trickier beast. Cold. And so this one, there's two different campaigns running. So we could break this out by cold 1 and cold 2. And for some reason, sometimes Facebook adds these pluses. You can pretty much just add these two groups together. It's just, I think it's when ads are duplicated, the pluses get added. But it's roughly 127 and 129. So cumulatively, that's 256 opt-ins from cold. And we have spent, oops, I don't need this one anymore. We have spent 517, let's call it 518 times 2. So roughly $1,036. So that's $4 per lead, right? $4.05 per lead for cold traffic. So the reason that I started into all this and I wanted to show you this is, A, we have a pretty good example. Even though we saw, like, I had forgotten, we mailed that blog post. And so there has been some traffic that came from other sources. But just for the sake of simplicity, we'll say it's essentially all Facebook. But Facebook thinks we're paying $1.60 per leads. And on warm traffic, we're paying closer to $3. And for cold traffic, we're paying closer to $4. So I think this problem is going to get significantly worse with iOS 14. Like, Facebook's attribution model is already clearly fundamentally broken, right? Because we're not looking at something that is a branding play. We're not looking at something that's a long buying cycle. This is an opt-in, something very clear, very simple, very direct. And Facebook is totally skewing the data. So going into 2021 and beyond that, I will not be looking at Facebook to measure my cost per result, my cost per lead, my cost per acquisition. I'm going to look at Facebook to understand what's going on in the platform, looking at cost per click, looking at click-through rate, looking at their metrics at the ad level that show you how an ad is performing. And I'm going to be looking at it, I guess, for clicks as well. And then for attribution and figuring out what's actually generating sales and opt-ins, I'm going to take two strategies. One, if I'm trying to do this at a session level for something like a opt-in, right, not a sale, I think it makes sense to just look at Google Analytics. And when I'm trying to make decisions about something that takes longer, right, that just naturally has a longer cycle, like an e-commerce store visit converting, I'm going to do a top line review. So I'm going to go in and say, like, okay, I know we're going to spend $15,000 on paid advertising this month. How many sales, or what does our revenue increase by after 30 days from when we spend this increased amount of money, and use that to measure it, and try to step away from trying to get in here and granularly say, Facebook said I got, X result, because here clearly we can see Facebook's cost per result is inaccurate. And I had a client of mine that I was looking at earlier this week. Facebook said it had generated 9,000 sales. And I was, with a very generous modeling, able to come up with 5,500 sales that I could, I think, effectively credit to Facebook. And that product is a lot closer to an opt-in, in that it's a very quick split-second decision. It's not something people spend a lot of time thinking about. So I really think we need to, as media buyers, marketers, step away from trying to use Facebook's cost per result and return on ad spend, and instead go to your CRM as a source of truth, right? When we're doing an opt-in, but it's brand new, and this says 756 opt-in, that is literally fact. That has to be true, because it's not like there's some magical email addresses that, just didn't make it into Klaviyo. If that is the case, then there's larger problems at hand that have to do with the CRM. But I'm just going to assume, and I know really because I've checked it, but that the setup here is right. So this is the best source of truth. This is a close enough to source of truth, right? Within 5% or so. And we can use this to make reasonable decisions about what our CPL actually is, what our CPA actually is, what our engagement on the site actually is. This is great to understand what's going on in the platform. Click-through rate, cost per click, understanding how many clicks there have been, how many impressions, all that. Totally fine. Absolutely terrible tool for measuring cost per result, cost per acquisition, cost per lead. So get ready to step away from looking at the data in the platform to measure your cost per result, to measure return on ad spend, and start learning to work in other platforms, right? It doesn't have to be Google Analytics. There are a bunch of tools that do the same thing. And it doesn't matter what your CRM is, right? There's lots and lots of CRMs that basically are going to give you the same kind of source of truth. Just want to make sure that you all aren't planning to keep relying on Ads Manager, because it's just not reliable right now, and it's going to get worse. So I thought this was a great thing to show. A little bit of a bummer, right? Like, I'm sure people are watching this thing like, crap. It doesn't mean that marketing is broken, right? It just means that this is not a useful metric for us to be sharing with the business owner, with clients, with our teams to make decisions from, right? You need to do the work, which is literally, I just am popping up the little bar here in the Mac and doing some simple calculations. Do the work, go in and understand how to come here into behavior pages and add campaign or source filters for your pages, calculate that, and then do some simple math, right? You can get the spend data from Facebook and get the opt-in data from Google Analytics, use that to make decisions. So hopefully that's helpful. I think it's useful to look at this. I know it's a little bit of a bummer, but I want you guys to be encouraged to go out and understand how to look at CRM data and how to look at analytics in 2021, not to say Facebook ads are broken. Still getting $3 and $4 leads is great, and I want to do that, right? I'm not saying we should turn these campaigns off. I'm just saying we shouldn't treat these campaigns like they're generating leads that are $1.60, because that is not healthy. And, we can't really scale a business if we're going to assume that things are performing twice as well as they are on Facebook, because it's easy to overspend and kind of put ourselves in a hole. So hopefully this is helpful. Let me know if you guys have any questions on that. Thanks so much.